Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 14th of October. Well, we started off with the declining MBI white, and magenta was still riding over yellow. In fact, though, it got very close to crossing below intraday in that, but a little bit later in the day, rally started taking place. We're still below that negative 13.5 on declining shakeout, and we have a rollover here on the DOC red. So bias is still to the short side, but clearly we have our defining lines. You have the 38% at 67. Above that, definitely can stay with the long setup, but any failure back below there, you would expect to see more selling. There was a brief respite. Treasuries sold very nicely, and that certainly added to the confidence level, which led to pretty solid buying even from the NASDAQ standpoint. We also have earnings starting up. You can see here the MBI on the NASDAQ has white dip below magenta, and magenta is still above yellow, though it's still declining. Again, pretty similar from a shakeout standpoint in DOC. We're in that, I used to call this like a duck bill, where it just goes straight across. And whenever we start seeing a rejection, either with the green rising or cyan dipping, would be an indication what we're going to see going forward. Certainly a break up of the cyan, and we expect lower. We don't have a steel reset, so from that standpoint, any amount of rally that takes place from here is probably short-lived unless that changes significantly. As we're talking about treasuries, excellent auction, which really was bought up well, driving rates lower. And that gave bounce back to the euro, but we're still in major negative areas. So it's one of those like short cover rally setups. Bitcoin had been trailing off for quite a bit from the MBI spike that happened there, and then there was a brief turnaround. Started into a sell, but then magenta moved back above white at this point, and as it started to build up, we had DOC green also moved above, and that led to decent rally in there, right back up to the same level. Interesting whether or not broader double top setup can configure. Don't have that at this particular stage yet, as long as magenta is still above that 33, but interesting to see that. From a 50K standpoint, it's pretty non-existent. We're pretty much holding right around that 43.55 range. Again, above the 43.70 range, you're looking more bullish from a market standpoint. But as long as it hovers in this range and isn't able to break through, it would just be a question of at what point bulls don't have enough to push it forward. Certainly aren't seeing much from a short standpoint. We finally got a little bit of improvement where DOC cyan has moved above the zero here on the 50K. Intraday, well, we started off with some decent rallies, and then we got these magenta dots, which again is just the spike of the magenta, and then white reaches that +5 area. Obviously, we like it when it crosses over. It did it a second time right there. It still had a little teeny pop, but it typically produces about that 10-point move, and that's about what that did there. And here, the same thing, and then as you get to that, you can see that you follow along with the other setups where, okay, we look for white over magenta, over orange, and all those were consistent and stayed with it until you get to that point where you see orange dips down. And that was the basis for the potential of a turnaround. But once we got the rejection right here, DOC, and white had pretty much stayed above it, so it was never that pop setup. Really what happened then was on that secondary move, we dipped down, made the new low, and that's where these violet lines come in, where the green sets up. In this particular case, you can see we had the rising DOC red in this particular case, and we didn't have significant white lead, because literally bar later, magenta is over yellow, and that began was a brief rally. We ended up with additional magenta candles. This one proved a little bit less energy in it because really didn't get a huge spike of orange when they signaled. Here was just above 7.5, which we look for a little bit more movement when that happens, and we ended up getting that, but it was short-lived again because you can see that magenta just cross stripe back above it, and orange dipped beautifully for classic setup. And then we just kind of hovered across, and when this one came through, never got white crossing back above red once the initial trigger, and that led to brief divergence, which can happen usually anywhere from 12 to, well, in this case it was 20 some points. Doesn't usually go much beyond that, but as soon as the secondary rose color popped in, that was like a quick 10 points. I mean, it was instant. It literally just filled the positive extremes that took place. And then we ended up with another one, and that one did the exact same thing. Just took longer to achieve the same number of points. And then it just got flat, pretty much going through. And I mean, it's a slight build, so there's just no edge with that. From the long side, just didn't produce anything. And there was literally no orange spike until we're seeing a little bit more of it right here. But kind of an uneventful end to things. So I think that the market is still in flux. There's still a lot of change happening, and as long as those ranges continue to be positive, it's all good stuff. As always, though, I'll keep putting up these charts on the Skype chat, and any adjustments to the program with like these violet setups and that, I will send that out to you. I'm still finalizing some of the minute details that go within there, and that way you'll have those setups as well. As always, though, trade well. We'll talk to you later.